It's science time! So for this module in science, we have been talking about how animals' body parts and things help them to survive. We also this week have been talking about different ways to classify animals. One way that we can classify them is whether they are vertebrates, which means they have a backbone, or whether they are invertebrates, which means they don't have a backbone. So in today's lab, we are actually going to create a model of an animal that does have a backbone so that we can see how it moves and how that helps that animal to survive. Are you ready? Let's dig in. For this lab, you are going to need two things. You're going to need some Play-Doh or clay, and you're going to need something small and seed-like. I'm using craisins because I have a lot of them, but you can use something else. You could use beans, you could use rice, you can use seeds, whatever you can find around the house. In a pinch, you could also just use more Play-Doh. Just make sure that the second color is rolled up into nice little tiny balls about the size of peas or craisins or seeds or sunflower seeds. But that's all you're going to need for this lab. I'll give you a few minutes to get what you need. Our first step of our lab is always safety, so make sure that you are not putting any of the lab materials in your mouth, even if they're edible, like seeds or raisins or cranberries, because once it touches the Play-Doh, sometimes the Play-Doh can have things inside of it that are not good to go inside of you. Okay, so we want to make sure we're not putting the Play-Doh in our mouths. Once we start handling materials, we want to make sure that we're not touching our mouths, not touching our face. And of course, we want to protect our eyes. So if you have your science goggles, go ahead and put those on. All right. So now our first step in our lab, our next step is going to be making our first model. So we're just going to take our first block of Play-Doh, and we are going to make a model of an animal. It can be whatever animal you want as long as it has a backbone. Let's get sculpting. So the animal that I chose to sculpt is a cat. It's not the prettiest cat, but I'm a teacher, not an artist. They are my favorite animals. They are vertebrates. They're in the feline family, and they are just so cute. So now that we've sculpted our animal, it's time for us to move to the next step. So we're going to take either our pieces of clay, or we're going to open our rice or craisins or raisins or seeds or whatever we're going to be using to model those backbones. And we are going to place them along the back of our animal. So these little pieces are going to model or represent the bones in the backbone of that animal. So we're just going to place them in the back. And make sure they're not overlapping. They're not right on top of one another. I'm going to get a different one. That one's kind of sticky. Make sure they're not right on top of one another because real backbones are not like that. They kind of have a little bit of space in between them. So I'm going to put little backbones all down the back of my animal. And my model is not very big. I don't have a lot of Play-Doh, so my model is not very big. So it's not going to take me very many to create this model of the backbone. So now we have a model of kind of where the bones are in that backbone. We're going to kind of push them in a little bit more. And we can see how that bone structure is. Okay, So now we are moving on to one of our final steps of our experiment today. And that is to kind of move our animal around. So we wanted to use Play-Doh or clay or something flexible so that we can kind of move the animal and see just how the backbone is moving when they do certain things. So like, for example, if the cat were running, you know, we would see the backbone kind of moving as they run. Sometimes cats like to sit down and kind of curl up. They kind of sit down like that and kind of curl up on their back. You know, and sometimes with cats, you'll see them, when they get really upset, they'll kind of arch their back and they'll kind of arch their back and their back will pop up like this and they'll go like, so we can kind of see how the backbone moves as our animal does. So here is our question for our lab. After making our model and kind of seeing how our animal moves, how do you think that backbone helps the animals to survive? Hey Noodles, you got a new friend. Yeah. So I'll give you guys some time to clean up your lab materials and get your worksheets filled out and be ready on the lookout for our science exit ticket for today. I hope you enjoyed our lab. I love doing labs with you guys. Until next time, keep it sciencey.